Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Dacade. My name is Dacade, and today's video we are going to work on a wandering NPC. So from the last video, we made a stationary NPC that just kind of stands there and turns as the player moves around, and then the player can interact. Well, now we're going to do a wandering one where the NPC will stay within a boundary, and once the player enters that boundary, then that NPC will act as the stationary NPC. But then as soon as the player leaves that boundary, then the NPC will continue to wander. But before we get into this, make sure you give this video a big old thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time. Now that's out of the way, let's get into it. So I already off screen kind of did a few things already, so that way I didn't bore you guys with it in the video, but let me explain it to you real fast. First, I did grab an NPC, the same one that we already were using since we've already started animating it and everything. The regular stationary NPC is still here, but I put this one here in a different room, so that way we're not cluttering this room up. I named it Wandering NPC. I gave the NPC a box collider. I gave it a rigid body 2D. Make sure you change the gravity scale to 0, and make sure you freeze the Z rotation. And I also gave it an animator, and where it says controller, if you click on this little target button here, make sure you click on NPC, and then it'll give the idle NPC animations. And then you should be familiar with how to do this, but I added the walk, down, left, right, and up animations, which actually I forgot to put in here, so it's actually a good thing, because I got to show you that in here you need to add a bull is moving, and then we need to just do everything in here real fast. So I'll knock this out real fast, and then I will fast forward through this. Okay, so now that that is done and out of the way, we can go back into here. But anyway, make sure you have that animator set up with the controller and complete your animation. So I have, walk down, walk left, all that stuff, as we've done before. With all of that out of the way, we can go to our scripts folder, our NPCs, and we have all these NPCs scripts here, but we are going to add a couple more. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a mono behavior script, and we're going to name this one NPC Wander Zone. And while we're here, we're going to create another mono behavior script, if Unity will allow us. There we go. And we're going to name this one Wandering NPC. And before we actually get into these, one last thing we want to do, once Unity allows us to do it, is we are going to create an empty, and we're going to name this Wander Zone. We are just going to attach the NPC Wander Zone to it right now. We're also going to add a box collider 2D. We want to make sure it is a trigger. And let's see where that's at. Oh, they put it right there. That's perfect. So what we're going to do is actually move it a little right on top of the NPC. Close enough. -40 and then 10. I don't know why the Z's all messed up, but we'll make that 0. Then we're going to edit that box collider, and we'll do something pretty big for our little guy to wander around in, or girl, because the animations on this could be unisex. But anyway, something like that should be enough. If you want to go bigger, you can. I would not go too small though. If you make too small of a restraint for the NPC to wander in, it could cause issues and the NPC could get stuck. And yeah, there's a lot of things that we don't want to have happen. Um, but now that we have that in place, now we can ignore my phone. Don't know why that went crazy like that. Anyway, we might as well add the wandering NPC script to the NPC. Can't do anything with it yet, but we are going to go into the wandering NPC script right now, which I did not have my Visual Studio open, but it's opening now, so there we go. And here we go. So first things first, we'll get rid of all this stuff. We'll be adding that manually. And in the public class here, where it says mono behavior, we are going to actually inherit from the base NPC. Now for all of our fun stuff, we're going to do a header, and we're going to do a wandering settings. Then here we're going to do a tooltip, and we are going to do the minimum idle time. And we're going to serialize that field. And we're going to do a private float min idle time. And for now, we're just going to set it to 1F. We can adjust that in the inspector. Then we're going to do a tooltip maximum idle time. Serialize that field and private floats max idle time, and we'll default that to 3F. Again, we can change that in the inspector. Another tooltip, and we will do a minimum movement time. We're going to serialize that field, and that's going to be a private float min move time, and again, default that to 1F. And then, of course, we have to have the maximum movement time. And we'll default that to 2F. And then we got to add that boundary in there. So we're going to serialize the field. We'll make it a private collider 2D and then wander zone. Sorry, I had to move. The way I was sitting was not very comfortable. Anyway, now that we have those, the rest of these will be private that don't need to be serialized. So we'll do a private bull player in zone is false. Another private bull is idle, and we'll default that to true. We'll do a private float idle timer. Another private float move timer. And then a private vector to move direction. All right, so now that we have all of our variables in place, we can start adding some fun stuff down here. So the very first thing we're going to do is a protected override void start. And it's automatically going to add that base start in there, which is fine because we need that. But we're also going to do a pick idle time. And that's going to give a red error, which is fine. We'll fix that here in a minute. We also need to have a protected override void update. And again, it's going to add that base update in there, which once again we will need. And then we need to do a couple things in here. So first, if the player is in the zone. Then we need my rigid body dot linear velocity to equal vector2 dot 0. That's going to make the NPC stop moving. We're going to do the animator dot set, not send message, set bool, there we go, is moving to false. That'll stop the animation. Then we're going to face the player, which the logic for that was already done in the base NPC script, so we don't need to do anything with that. And then we need to return. Then we need to do if is idle. We need to do an idle timer minus equals time dot delta time. And then a little bit of logic in there. So if the idle timer is less than or equal to 0, then we need to pick move time, pick new move direction, and is idle is false. And we're going to do the logic for those two things here in just a moment. However, if the idle timer is not at 0, so else, we're not going to move. So my rigid body dot linear velocity is vector2 dot 0, and animator dot set bool is moving to false. All right. So then, if we're not idle, so we're going to do an else here. We are going to do a bunch of stuff here. So move timer minus equals time dot delta time. And then we're going to do a temporary vector2 here. Predicted position. And my rigid body dot position plus move direction times move speed times time dot delta time. So what we're doing here is we're trying to predict our next movement, our movement before we actually move. And there's a reason why we're doing that. It essentially is to prevent some weird stuff from happening. But anyway, if we are not within the wander zone dot bounds dot contains then predicted position. So what we're doing here is we're using that predicted move position to figure out if it's going to be within the bounds or not. If it's not in the bounds, then it'll do something, or if it's not within the bounds, then we're going to move towards the center. So that's what we're doing here. So vector2 to center equals vector2 wander zone dot bounds dot center minus my rigid body dot position. So what that is right there is we're figuring out where the center of the bounds is, and we're doing that by figuring out where our position is. So our position minus, or the center minus our position will give us what we need in order to move towards that center. And then move direction equals to center plus random. Oh, okay. Why did I do that? Random dot inside unit circle times 0.5f dot normalized. So all we're doing is we're moving to the center, but we're picking a random direction essentially to move instead of just to the center. That way it's a little bit more realistic as opposed to just doing whatever. Then we're going to, down here, we're actually going to move as well. We're going to do my rigid body dot linear velocity equals move direction times move speed. So this little block of code's only going to happen if we're going to move outside of our bounds. If we're not going to move outside of our bounds, then we're just going to move normally. So animator.setBool, not all that fun jazz, is moving to true. Animator.setFloat, that is move x, and move direction dot x, and then animator dot set float, move y, move direction dot y. And then if the move timer is less than or equal to 0, then we are going to pick idle time is idle is going to be true. My rigid body dot linear velocity is going to be vector2 dot 0, so we're not going to move. And we are going to set the animator dot set bool is moving to false. And what we're going to do, actually, I don't like all of that to be an update, so we're just going to highlight all of that. We are going to hit Control X. We are going to go down here to a private void wander movement. And then we're just going to hit Control V, post all that there. And then in update, we're just going to do wander movement. That looks a little bit better. So now that we got that out of the way, there's a couple more things that we need to do here. So first, we need to do a private void pick idle time. And we are going to do an idle timer. It's going to be a random range. And it is going to be a min idle time or max idle time or anything in between. So all we're doing is just setting the idle timer to a random between the minimum and the maximum that we can set in the inspector. We're also going to do the same thing for the move timer. So we're going to do move timer equals random dot range min move time and max move time. And that's all we need to do there, and that should have gotten rid of most of our errors except for the pick new move direction, which we are going to do right now. It is a private void pick new move direction. And just doing that should have gotten rid of that error up there, and it looks like it did. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a temporary vector2 to center. And that is going to be vector2 wander zone dot bounds dot center minus my rigid body dot position. So again, we're finding where we're at relative to the center. We're also going to do a vector2 random direction, and we're going to do random dot inside unit circle dot normalized, and then we're going to do move direction, just going to equal random direction plus to center dot normalized. We're going to multiply that by 0.5f, and then we're also going to normalize that. All right. Then lastly, we need a public void set player in zone bool state. And all we need to do here is player in zone equals state. Well, I didn't do. So instead of doing the brackets and all that stuff for one simple little command, this is just a shorter way of doing it. But that's all we need to do in the wandering NPC. Now we need to go back into Unity and let it compile here. We need to go into the NPC wandering zone and do what we need to do in here. So let us do that. And this is going to be short and sweet in here, so we should be able to fly through this. But what we need to do is we need to add a serialized field, private wandering NPC. Just name it NPC. We don't need to really do a tooltip here, but we will. That's all we need to do. All right, so now we need to do a private void on trigger enter 2D. And again, I like to change this to other. Then we need to do if other dot compare tag is the player, then NPC dot set player in zone to true. And then down here we need to do a private void on trigger exit 2D. Okay. I don't know what happened there, but let's get rid of that and let's just do a private void on trigger exit 2D. There we go. And then do other. And then here we just need to do if other dot compare tag player, then NPC dot set player in zone to false. And that's all we really need to do in here. So now that that's done, we can go back into Unity again. Let it all compile. And if we go to our wandering zone, it's going to ask for the NPC. We just click and drag the NPC over there. And then if we go on to our wandering NPC, you'll notice all of this stuff down here changed. Let's see, we'll name him, what did we name the other one? We named the other one Dan. Let's just stick with the D's and we'll name him David. Move speed, I believe the 4. Detection range, what was the detection range here? The 5. We'll do the same thing here, 5. We're not doing any branching dialogue or anything yet, so we can ignore all of that. The text bubble, we'll need that. So the text bubble and the bubble text, we'll add some dialogue later. We'll get the player in there. There's all of our times that we can adjust. And then the wander zone is the wander zone, so we'll drop that in there. Now let's add some dialogue. Hello? Did this video help you? If so, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you. All right, so now that all of this stuff is in place, we will hit the play button. Now, if we go to scene, we can watch our NPC move around. We can turn on the edit the box collider to watch the NPC actually bounce off those. There we go. So the NPC is wandering around. So let's see what happens when the player goes and interacts. Get away from me, slime. I'm not dealing with you right now. All right, so we come up here and we enter the zone, and the NPC stops and stares at the player. And we get close enough, we can interact. And then we can sit there and stare at each other for a while. Or we can leave the zone, and as soon as we leave the zone, the NPC goes back to wandering around. So that is all I have for this video. If you liked it, and if it was helpful, make sure you give it the big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time. And as always, have a good one. And I'll see you in the next one.